Have you ever been betrayed so badly that even the happiest day of your family's life turned into the start of your own personal nightmare? Because that's exactly what happened to me. On the very day my little sister got married, I ended up losing my marriage. It wasn't just the timing that hurt. It was how it happened. In front of my entire family. In front of her entire family. And in front of over 200 guests, my wife decided to humiliate me so publicly that I swear I could hear the whispers echoing louder than the music. And the worst part? I didn't even see it coming. Not a single hint. Not a single warning. 1 minute, I was laughing with my cousins, making sure my sister's big day was perfect. The next, my life was unraveling right before my eyes. If you're enjoying this so far, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to know. By the way, I'm Omar Rahman, 33 years old, a financial analyst in Toronto, and, until that day, a man who thought he had a stable marriage. This all happened last winter, and I can still remember the exact scent of the roses in the wedding hall, the golden glow of the chandeliers, and the heavy pit in my stomach that wouldn't leave me for weeks afterward. You see, my sister, Layla, is the baby of the family, and I'd always promised myself that when she got married, I would be her biggest supporter, her protector, the one making sure nothing ruined her day. But little did I know. The disaster that unfolded wouldn't come from bad catering or a drunk uncle. It would come from the woman I had vowed to love and protect for the rest of my life. From the moment we arrived at the venue, everything looked perfect. Layla was glowing, the kind of glow you can't fake. The stage was decorated with cascading white orchids, and the soft hum of traditional oud music floated through the air. Guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and the scent of saffron rice drifted in from the kitchen. My wife, Sarah, had insisted on wearing this deep emerald gown that hugged her figure in all the right places. She looked stunning, the kind of stunning that made people turn their heads. I remember feeling proud as I walked in with her. But then, I started noticing little things. How she seemed extra chatty with one particular group of people. How she kept pulling out her phone, grinning down at it in a way she never did when texting me. How she would vanish for 10, 15 minutes at a time. At first, I brushed it off. It was my sister's wedding. I didn't want to turn into the paranoid husband. I kept smiling, shaking hands, hugging relatives I hadn't seen in years. But every so often, I'd catch Sarah looking at me with this strange expression. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was almost like amusement. As if she knew something I didn't. And then, halfway through the reception, when Layla had just stepped onto the dance floor with her new husband, Sarah walked up to me, grabbed the microphone from the DJ, and called for everyone's attention. I swear, the music stopped, the chatter died, and every head turned toward her. My stomach tightened instantly. What came out of her mouth next would not only humiliate me, it would rip apart my marriage in a single, irreversible moment. Sarah's heels clicked against the wooden dance floor as she stood in the center, holding the microphone like she owned the night. I could feel the collective attention of 200 people settle on her. My parents, my sister, my new brother-in-law, even the catering staff paused mid-service. Her voice was bright, almost too bright. "First of all," she said, smiling sweetly, "I just want to say what an honor it is to be here for Layla's special day. She's truly the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." There was polite applause. I forced a smile, but my palms were sweating. Something about the way she emphasized honor made my neck tighten. Then she glanced at me. Not the way a loving wife looks at her husband. It was the way someone looks right before they push a chess piece into place, the kind that ends the game. "I also think," she continued, "that weddings are the perfect place for truths to come out." My heart thudded hard enough to drown out the background murmurs. A few guests exchanged confused glances. I mean, she said, still smiling, if two people are going to spend their lives together, honesty should be the foundation, right? At that moment, I swear I saw Layla's smile falter just slightly. She could feel it too. Something was wrong. And then Sarah's tone shifted. Her voice lowered, her eyes locked on mine, and she said, "So, Omar, maybe now is the perfect time to tell everyone the truth about what you've been doing behind my back." The room went silent. I felt the oxygen get sucked out of the air. Even the DJ froze with his hand above the playlist. Every muscle in my body tensed. I could hear the faint clink of a spoon being dropped somewhere near the dessert table, but otherwise, nothing. Just silence. 200 pairs of eyes locked on me. "What exactly do you mean, Sarah?" I asked, keeping my voice even, though my pulse was hammering. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a smirk that made my stomach twist. "Oh, don't play innocent. You've been having quite the private meetings at work, haven't you?" A ripple of whispers ran through the room. My mother's brows knit together in confusion. Layla's eyes darted between us, her hands tightening around her bouquet. I shook my head slowly, still trying to process. "Private meetings?" Sarah stepped closer, heels clicking sharply with each step. "Don't act like you don't know. That assistant of yours, the one you text late at night, the one you've taken out to lunch more times than you've taken me out this year. Do I need to spell it out for everyone?" I could feel my jaw tightening. Not because her accusation was true, it wasn't, but because she'd chosen here, now, to air whatever twisted theory she'd been stewing on. And the worst part? From the corner of my eye, I could see some guests already shifting uncomfortably, their expressions shifting from shock to suspicion. Even if I was innocent, in moments like this, perception was everything. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to call her out for blindsiding me, but my voice caught in my throat. And then, as if to cement the dagger she'd just driven into my reputation, Sarah turned to the crowd and said, "Go ahead, Omar. Tell everyone what your late nights at the office are really about." I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady, but I could feel the heat rising up my neck. "Sarah, what you're implying is not only wrong, it's insulting," I said, scanning the crowd as if to anchor myself in the faces of the people who actually knew me. But it didn't matter. The seed had been planted. Some guests already had that look, the one that says, "Even if I believe you, I'll still remember this forever." I stepped toward her, lowering my voice so only the front row of guests could hear. "We are not doing this here." She didn't flinch. "Oh, I think here is exactly where we should do it," she shot back, still smiling for the audience. "After all, you've been performing for everyone for years." That stung, not because it was true, but because she knew exactly how to make it sound true. I felt my frustration boiling over. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was my sister's wedding, and Sarah had hijacked it like it was her personal stage. I could see Layla in the background, her lips moving as she whispered something to her husband, probably asking if they should intervene. My father's jaw was set tight, his eyes darting between us like he was weighing whether to step in himself. I tried again, my voice harder this time. "If you have something real to say it to me privately. Not like this. Not in front of my family." Her smile widened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of satisfaction, as if my composure cracking was exactly what she wanted. Just as I was about to say more, Layla's husband, Kareem, stepped forward. "All right, everyone," he said with an awkward laugh, trying to diffuse the tension. "Let's remember this is a wedding, not a courtroom. How about we save whatever this is for another time?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I caught Layla's eyes, and she gave me the smallest nod, a silent "I've got you." For a brief moment, I felt the balance shift. If I played this right, maybe we could shut this down before Sarah went completely off the rails. I looked at her and said quietly, "This is your last chance to walk away from this without making a complete scene." She hesitated. It wasn't much, just a fraction of a second, but I saw her jaw tighten as if she was weighing her next move. And then, surprisingly, she handed the microphone back to the DJ. "Fine," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "We'll talk later." The music picked up again, people started murmuring, and I could feel the energy in the room slowly trying to recover. For the first time in the last 5 minutes, I let myself breathe. Maybe, just maybe, this was over. Of course, I didn't know then that this was just the opening act of my humiliation. Sarah wasn't done. Not even close. I spent the next hour trying to refocus on my sister's big night. I made sure the cake cutting went smoothly, danced with Layla during the sibling song, and even managed to laugh a little with my cousins. But every time I glanced across the hall, I caught Sarah watching me. Not in the affectionate, "That's my husband," way. More like a hunter keeping track of her target. At one point, I saw her slip out the side door. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my coworker, the very assistant Sarah had mentioned earlier. "Are you okay? I just got a weird DM from your wife." My stomach dropped. I texted back quickly. What did she say? The reply came almost instantly. "She sent me a screenshot of your text with me, and told me not to play dumb about you too." I felt my face heat up. Those texts were completely innocent. Project updates, reminders, the occasional bad office joke. But stripped of context and paired with Sarah's accusations, I could see how they might look to someone who didn't know better. This wasn't just an argument anymore. She was escalating, and now she was dragging other people into it. I slipped out into the hallway, scanning for her. When I finally found her near the coat room, she was leaning against the wall, scrolling through her phone with the same smug expression she'd had earlier. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice low but sharp, "what the hell are you doing?" Sarah didn't even look up from her phone. "Just making sure the truth gets to the right people," she said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "The truth?" I hissed. "You're spreading lies at my sister's wedding." Finally, she looked up, her eyes cold. "Lies? Omar, I've seen the way you look at her. I've heard the little laughs you two share at work. Do you think I'm stupid?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Those are normal interactions with a colleague. You know that. You're twisting things because, what? You're bored? You want drama?" Her lips curled into a smile that sent a chill through me. "Oh, this isn't about boredom. This is about letting people know who you really are." I froze. That tone, it wasn't the voice of a jealous wife. It was the voice of someone who had already decided to burn the bridge and watch the ashes scatter. She slipped her phone into her clutch and brushed past me toward the ballroom. By the time I caught up, she was already at the head table, leaning down to whisper something in my mother's ear. I watched my mother's face shift, from confusion to shock to something I'd never seen from her before when looking at me, doubt. That's when I knew. Sarah wasn't just embarrassing me anymore. She was dismantling my reputation one whispered conversation at a time. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to stand there and let her poison my family against me. This was Layla's wedding, a day I had promised myself I'd protect for her, and I'd be damned if I let Sarah turn it into a smear campaign. I crossed the room, ignoring the stares that followed me, and stepped right between Sarah and my mother. Mom, whatever she just told you, it's not true, I said firmly, my eyes locked on Sarah. And you know me better than to believe it. My mother hesitated. Her gaze flickered between us, her lips pressing into a thin line. Omar, she said she has proof. Then let her show it, I said, raising my voice just enough for nearby relatives to hear. Right here. Right now. For a moment, Sarah looked caught off guard. Her plan had been built on whispers and side eyes, not on a direct confrontation. But then, that smug confidence returned. Gladly, she said, pulling out her phone. I'll show them exactly what you've been sending. As she tapped her screen, I turned to the crowd gathering around us. Before you look at anything, remember, messages can be taken out of context. Screenshots can be misleading. And I have nothing to hide. The murmurs quieted. Even the music seemed to fade. This was it. The moment I'd either clear my name or watch it get buried under Sarah's lies. Sarah swiped through her phone and held it up like a winning lottery ticket. Here, she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the air. Tell me this doesn't look suspicious. On the screen was a string of texts between me and my assistant, Rania. Yes, there were emojis. A laughing face here, a thumbs up there, but nothing remotely romantic or inappropriate. I took the phone from her hand before she could scroll further. This is what you're calling evidence? Work updates and bad puns about our company's new coffee machine? A few people in the crowd snickered. My cousin even muttered, "That's it?" under his breath. Sarah's jaw tightened. You're downplaying it. People can see the tone, know what they can see. I interrupted, my voice rising. Is you twisting ordinary conversations into a scandal because you either don't trust me or you want an excuse to ruin this night? I turned to my mother. Does this sound like cheating to you? She hesitated, but then shook her head slightly, her doubt softening. Sarah's face flushed, but instead of backing down, she stepped closer and whispered, just for me to hear. This isn't about proof, Omar. This is about you finally feeling what I've felt for years. The words hit me like a cold wave. This wasn't jealousy. This was revenge. For what? I didn't yet know. I barely had time to process her cryptic threat before she stepped back, raised her chin, and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Fine. If you think I'm overreacting, maybe they should hear the whole story. My chest tightened. Sarah, but she was already walking toward the DJ booth again. The poor guy looked like he'd seen a ghost as she took the microphone from him for the second time that night. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. I know you're all here to celebrate Layla and Kareem, but I think it's important to be honest in relationships, and sometimes that means speaking up when you've been wronged. The music faded. The chatter died down. Everyone was staring at her again. She glanced at me, then back to the crowd. Omar has been spending a lot of time at work lately. A lot of time. And while he says it's for late projects, I've been finding little signs that say otherwise. I felt my jaw clench. Sarah, enough. But she kept going, her tone turning theatrical. Lipstick on his shirts. Receipts for dinners I wasn't invited to. And phone calls where he suddenly leaves the room. A few gasps rippled through the audience. My father shifted in his chair, looking deeply uncomfortable. The thing was, none of it was as damning as she made it sound. The lipstick was from Layla borrowing my jacket once. The dinners were client meetings. The phone calls were with my boss. But the way she framed it, it sounded like a script from a soap opera, and right now, she had the entire crowd as her audience. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. The room was tilting, not physically, but in the way attention was shifting, from a wedding celebration to a public trial with me as the accused. I moved toward her, my hands out in a placating gesture. Sarah, you've made your point. Let's talk outside. She jerked the mic back, stepping away like I was some kind of predator. No, Omar. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. You've been doing that for years. Her voice cracked just slightly, and that small tremor made her sound more convincing to anyone who didn't know her like I did. I glanced toward Layla. She was pale, gripping Kareem's arm. My father's face was stone. My mother's eyes were glassy with tears. The sight of them like that, it made something inside me ache in a way anger couldn't reach. I turned back to Sarah, my voice firm but trembling at the edges. This is my sister's wedding. I will not let you destroy it because you're angry at me for something I didn't do. She smirked. Didn't do? Should I tell them about the weekend you said you were on a business trip, but your GPS history shows you were in Niagara Falls? My breath caught. I had gone to Niagara Falls to plan a surprise anniversary getaway for her. But of course, she didn't know that. Or maybe she did, and this was all part of twisting the knife. And for the first time that night, I realized there was no reasoning with her. No clearing my name tonight. She wasn't here to have a conversation. She was here to annihilate me. Something inside me hardened. If Sarah was determined to paint me as the villain, then I needed to take the brush out of her hand. Right here, right now. I walked up to her, close enough that the mic picked up my voice, and said clearly, You're right, Sarah. People should be honest. So let me be honest with everyone here tonight. A hush fell over the crowd. Even Sarah tilted her head, curious where I was going with this. I've been married to this woman for 4 years, I continued, my voice steady. I've done my best to love her, support her, and be loyal to her. And while I'm far from perfect, I've never once cheated on her. Not with Rania, not with anyone. I saw a flicker in my mother's eyes, a tiny spark of belief returning. I went on. What you're witnessing tonight isn't a confession. It's a performance. A way for Sarah to take something broken between us and turn it into public humiliation. And I'm done letting her control the story. Sarah's expression faltered for the first time all night. It wasn't much, just a twitch of her jaw, but it was enough to know I'd hit a nerve. I turned to the guests, my voice stronger now. This is Layla's wedding. We are here to celebrate love, not to destroy it. So unless anyone here has a real reason to keep dragging this circus on, I suggest we let the bride and groom have the night they deserve. A smattering of applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing. I saw Layla's eyes glisten with gratitude. As the applause faded and the music cautiously picked up again, I stepped back from Sarah, but my mind was already racing. This wasn't over. Not tonight, not tomorrow. I knew one thing for certain. If she was willing to sabotage me in front of my entire family, she wouldn't hesitate to twist the story further once we were alone. And if I wasn't careful, she'd leave me not just humiliated, but legally and financially gutted. I glanced at my cousin Faisal, who'd been standing near the edge of the crowd during the whole confrontation. Faisal wasn't just family, he was a lawyer. I caught his eye and gave the smallest nod. He understood immediately, pulling out his phone like he was already making mental notes. Then I turned to Layla and whispered, I'm sorry. I'll make sure this doesn't ruin your night any more than it already has. She squeezed my hand. Just don't let her win, Omar. That was the moment my focus shifted. This wasn't about arguing with Sarah anymore. It was about protecting myself. I needed to gather proof, get ahead of whatever story she planned to tell after tonight, and make sure that if this ended in divorce, it would be on my terms. But first, I had to get through the rest of this wedding without letting her pull me into another public battle. And I had a feeling she wasn't done trying. I kept my distance for the next half hour, staying close to my cousins and avoiding Sarah's line of sight. Every time I looked her way, she was deep in conversation, sometimes with relatives from her side, sometimes with mine. Each time, she wore that same sly smile, like she was planting seeds that would bloom into poison later. Then came the moment I knew the night was about to shift again. It was during the bouquet toss. Layla stood in the center of the dance floor, a playful grin on her face, as a group of single women gathered behind her. The music was upbeat, the atmosphere finally loosening after all the tension. And then, Sarah stepped into the group. At first, I thought nothing of it. She was married. It would just be for fun, right? But as the bouquet sailed through the air, she lunged for it like her life depended on it, and caught it. The crowd laughed and clapped, but before the sound even faded, she lifted the bouquet high and shouted into the mic. Yes, she'd managed to grab it from the DJ again. "Looks like I'm the next bride, as soon as I'm done divorcing this one." The laughter died instantly. Every single head turned toward me. Layla's smile vanished. Kareem muttered something under his breath. My father slammed his palm against the table. And me? I just stood there, bouquet petals scattering across the floor, realizing that this wasn't just an ugly fight anymore. This was the public death of our marriage. The room was frozen in that awful, heavy silence, the kind where everyone is waiting to see what you'll do next. I could have laughed it off, pretended she was just being dramatic, and walked away. But that would have been surrender. And I was done surrendering. I stepped forward, my voice loud enough to carry, but calm enough to keep control. "Well, Sarah, if you're so eager to announce our divorce, then let's make it official. Tonight. Right here." A murmur rolled through the crowd like a shockwave. Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting me to bite back in front of an audience. "What are you talking about?" I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. "I'm texting Faisal to start drafting the papers. You want out? You've got it. But don't think for a second you'll get to walk away from this looking like the victim." Her smirk faltered. "You're bluffing." I looked her dead in the eyes. "Try me." Gasps broke out. Some guests were leaning forward like it was a live TV drama. Others, especially my parents, looked heartbroken, but I couldn't stop now. Because the truth was, this was a gamble. By calling her bluff in public, I risked making her double down. But it also meant reclaiming the one thing she'd been stripping from me all night: control. Sarah lowered the bouquet slowly, her eyes locked on mine, like we were the only two people in the room. "You really want to do this here?" she said, her voice low but carrying. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "You wanted an audience. Let's give them the ending they're waiting for." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd again. Layla's hand flew to her mouth, and Kareem took a small step forward like he was ready to intervene. Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Fine. Let's do it. But when they hear what you've done, no one will blame me for walking away." I folded my arms. "Then tell them. All of them. Every single detail. Right now." The challenge hung in the air like static. For the first time all night, she hesitated. Not because she didn't have the nerve. Sarah thrived on public scenes. But because she knew she didn't have proof. Without her carefully timed whispers and half-truths, her accusations sounded flimsy. So instead of speaking, she did something worse. She smiled, that slow, infuriating smile, and said, "You'll regret this." I took a step closer. "The only thing I regret is wasting years on someone who would rather burn everything down than have an honest conversation." The room was silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. This wasn't just an argument anymore. It was a public declaration that our marriage was over. Sarah's lips parted like she was about to throw one final grenade into the room. But instead, she dropped the bouquet onto the dance floor and turned away. "Fine," she muttered. "Enjoy your perfect little family without me." She strode toward the exit, her heels striking the marble like a gavel ending a trial. The heavy double doors swung shut behind her, leaving a vacuum of stunned silence. I stood there for a moment, the adrenaline still pulsing through me. I half expected her to burst back in for one last word, but she didn't. She was gone. Slowly, the music crept back on. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Layla walked over, her gown swishing against the floor, and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. I'm sorry this happened at your wedding. But I promise you, I'll make sure this is the last time she ever gets to humiliate me." Kareem joined us, clapping a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You handled it better than most would have, man." Maybe he was right. Maybe walking away from this marriage, from Sarah, was the best thing I could do for myself. But as I looked around the hall, seeing the relief in my family's faces now that she was gone, I knew one thing for certain. The marriage might have ended tonight, but my dignity was still mine. When the night finally wound down and the last guests drifted out into the cold Toronto air, I lingered in the empty hall, staring at the scattered petals from Sarah's bouquet stunt. The smell of roses and spiced lamb still hung in the air, but now it was mixed with the faint scent of burnt coffee from the catering station. Fitting, I thought, for a night that had soured so fast. I replayed every moment in my mind, the way she strutted to the mic the first time, the smirk when she accused me, the deliberate whispers to my mother, and finally, that slow walk toward the exit, like she'd just claimed victory. Only, I didn't feel like she'd won. If anything, it felt like she'd just revealed who she truly was, not only to me, but to everyone who mattered. And while that truth stung, it also freed me. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd come to my sister's wedding determined to protect her happiness at all costs. Instead, I'd been forced to protect my own self-respect in front of the same crowd. In the corner of the hall, Faisal was packing up his briefcase. He caught my eye and gave a subtle nod, the kind that said, "Call me tomorrow, we'll start the paperwork." It was oddly comforting. Not because I wanted a divorce, but because I needed it. The next morning, the winter sunlight spilled through my living room windows, painting the floor in gold. For the first time in months, maybe years, the air in my home felt still. No passive-aggressive remarks over breakfast. No tension humming just beneath the surface. Just silence, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. I thought back to the first line I had spoken in my head the night before everything unraveled. The happiest day of my sister's life became the start of my nightmare. Only now, with a little distance, I realized maybe it wasn't a nightmare at all. Maybe it was the wake-up call I'd been avoiding. Sarah had tried to tear me down in front of everyone I loved, but in doing so, she'd also given me something unexpected. A crystal-clear view of the kind of life I didn't want anymore. A life where I was constantly defending myself against someone who claimed to love me. As I sat there, my phone buzzed, a photo from Layla and Kareem on their honeymoon. They were on a beach somewhere, laughing, holding hands, completely oblivious to anything but each other. I smiled, because despite everything, I'd managed to keep the spotlight on them for most of the night. And that mattered to me more than anything. So yes, my marriage ended at my sister's wedding. But my dignity didn't. And as strange as it sounds, I'll always be grateful to Sarah for making the choice so painfully, unmistakably clear. If you want more stories like this, subscribe, give this a like, and share where you're tuning in from in the comments.